Welcome to episode 96.
Communicating with the Dead.
Ooh. Join us as it's in the title.
It really is.
Join us as we discuss our thoughts about the world around us and the world inhabited by the dead.
And how we can reach across that divide and communicate with them.
Stay tuned. Welcome to the Witchy Wit podcast, where we look at life through a witchy lens. I'm Kimberlyn.
I'm Leilani.
At Witchy Wit, we explore current events,
ideas,
music and books,
and experiences in ways that recognize energy and life in everybody and everything.
We are both real witches.
And we bring two real perspectives through the lens of our different ages,
races,
and backgrounds.
With a healthy skepticism for what we have been told is true, our conversations are raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Join us as we cast a spell to uncover what we each know is true in our intuitive, witchy selves.
Welcome to episode 96.
Communicating with the dead.
The dead.
The dead.
The dead.
The dead.
The dead. Yay! Okay, well, which is, I think, kind of sums up how we're going to be talking about
it.
Them.
Really is to the point. So
exactly.
Maybe we could do a check-in, then discuss that topic of communicate with the dead, especially because of the time of year that it is, with it being Samhain season, and then wrap it all up with a short poem.
Sounds like a plan.
It's awesome. So with our check-ins in mind, who do you think should go first?
Why don't I go first?
Okay. I'll strap in.
Okay,
put on my seatbelt. Here we go.
Mine's a rant. I put it in our outline. So I just got an article. I guess maybe it came in last night, but I saw it this morning. New York Times article that's connecting moderate alcohol drinking with higher rates of cancer in younger people under 50. Okay. And so some of this is going to sound slightly like a justification because I do drink my alcohol. As you know,
I supported that by giving you my
by giving me your
wine.
Your wine. So which I still appreciate. But I also, it just so connects for me with so many of my issues with modern society. So we have a number of problems. Okay, let me take a step back. So the studies showed that I think it's higher rates of colorectal cancer, pancreatic cancer, maybe uterine. I can't remember all the ones, but and among people under 50. It also noted that people are actually living longer with these, with having these treatments, et cetera, but the fact that there's so many more instances of it is telling. So Kimberlyn thought to herself, which is what I call myself when I talk to myself, Kimberlyn, why do you suppose that is? I mean, they connected to alcohol because they did a study and they asked them how much they drank. In my opinion, it's one of those things where it's like, look here and not there. Because if we're focusing on, okay, maybe we need to cut down on our alcohol or our cholesterol, all our this, or our, then maybe we're not looking at all of the fucking, I'm ready.
Here we go. Click. My seatbelt's on.
Okay, thank you. Are you holding on to the ocean bar? Okay. To all of the environmental pressures that we are confronted with day after day after day after day. So we have like pollution in the air, we have pollution in our water, we have like craptastic processed foods that people are ingesting nonstop. And told that it's good for them. See, this is the problem. It'd be different if everyone's like, oh, you know what, I shouldn't be. Oh, what the fuck? But people are saying, oh, these are great for you. Eating all of this highly processed food. We are even when we do eat natural food, our soil is so freaking depleted by mono farming, where you just use, basically in the United States, we have something like 12 crops. And we just do them over and over again. We don't rotate. We don't do any other crops. We don't do varieties. We don't do what's the word for the older species and varieties. So and then there's our home and personal care products, which if you look at the ingredients, I mean, it's longer than your arm, most of which you don't know because it's all manufactured in a factory. Manufactured in a factory. Okay, manufactured in a factory. And we're putting, like, personal care products. We're putting that on our skin. That's our largest, most absorbent organ. So we're basically, I mean, we might as well just like inject it into our veins. That's slightly faster than putting it on our skin. So we have all of these things that's increasing in our society day after day after day after day. So as an older person, I've had less exposure to it than you have. Mm-hmm. And you have had less exposure to it than someone who is 20. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that we're seeing these higher rates in people who are younger, to me, is also correlated with all of the other environmental pressures that they're confronted with. And I haven't even talked about home products. I mean, you know, like the shit we put all. Okay. Okay. So I just find it. I personally think that maybe what happened was the past few years, the alcohol industry boards have not been, quote unquote, doing air quotes up here, folks, funding research as much as they used to. And so maybe that's why we're pointing at them, as opposed to, I mean, sounding like a conspiracy theorist, I know, but all of the things that are different with people under 50, and they're going to just look at alcohol. I'm not done, but I'm going to make myself done so that we can actually have a podcast and you can get a chance to talk. But it was just infuriating. Infuriating.
Thank you for sharing. No, I'm serious. Well, because I think people, of course, confuse correlation and causation, and so you as a researcher, you are a researcher, so I appreciate you looking at things. I find what they say interesting, but I find what you say also interesting.
Thank you.
I think it's a great opportunity to reflect at life holistically.
And I'm not asking people to believe me as opposed to them, but I just want to point out that we're looking at a 3-legged stool with 2 of the legs missing. When we see things like that, I'm constantly. I always want to. I try to find their data sets, and I try to find their the other things that were in their questionnaires, because most of these are questionnaires,
right?
So anyway, I said I was done, but now I really am done.
But I think when people look at the title like that, they think they went in and they saw these alcohol molecules go in and nest in their intestines, and then cancer molecules popped up. And really, it's different than that. It's a correlatory study. Like, yes,
it's so much more complex, and they're trying to boil it down. And granted,
into a headline,
into a headline, into a newspaper, a slow day newspaper article. Right. Or it was one of those smaller research studies where that was one of the things, and probably the last 4 pages are, this requires further study.
Right.
We need to look at these aspects, blah, 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 blah. But will they talk about that? No. They'll just find that one little detail, like, whoa, and then make a huge article on it.
Right.
Okay,
moving on.
I'm done now, really.
Right,
I promise.
Right, okay.
So thank you so much for supporting me in for letting me vent. For letting me vent, because like I said, I don't know if people agree or disagree or believe or whatever, and that's fine. This is just how I feel. But let's move on and ask you, how are you feeling?
Thank you. I wanted to check in and share about my journey of mental and emotional health in the context of it being a journey. And sometimes, and so this happened to me recently at my last appointment with my therapist. So I do believe that that my mental and emotional health, also basically everything is it's more like tending a garden where I'm constantly pulling a weed, adding fertilizer, moving the soil around, it's like a constant tending. But sometimes I think I forget, and I start treating it like it's some sort of journey where there's no going, oh no, I've reached that checkpoint, done. That's done. Moving on. And I don't know why I switch into the checkpoint mentality, because I don't consciously switch, but it's like this, it just happens. And then something happens, and then I'm shaken back into being no, it's not a race. It's not a checkpoint. It's not, I'm not checking things off. and then I'm good. It's a tending of a garden. It's a constant nurturing. And so I don't know. I just wanted to share because I don't know why my consciousness shifts into that other, because I don't consciously do it, but it just happens. And then I get to remind myself, hey, it's not that. It's more this. Remember? Oh yeah.
I love that analogy of the garden because it sounds so nurturing. It's not, I'm broken and I've got to fix that. Okay, I put a cast on this leg. Good, we're done.
Check.
And then I'll take it off and then I'll be able to walk. But I love that idea of, taking care of yourself and nurturing and, this is going to need a little bit more work. That is a beautiful, beautiful analogy. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And that really helps me when I have my spirals, which are often, you think spiral, okay, I'm spiraling up. Well, usually when I spiral, I'm spiraling down. But that's going to be very helpful for me. I really appreciate that. Yeah. And I would suggest that kind of checklist mentality is very much again, I'm down on our society right now. I don't know why. I'm not really down on our society. I'm just down on the ways in which I feel manipulated by our society. And that's our, we're a society of doers, right? So you do this thing, check. You do that thing, check. Not a society of beers. I'm sitting out in my garden and watching this grow and then watching this die back and then watching that move and that, so the organic process.
I think that really resonates. I put things on my checklist to get done just so I can cross them off because I've already done them. So
I've done that once or twice. It's like, well, particularly some big thing that you forgot to put on your to-do list.
Like,
it's like
put that on there.
That's right, because I want a sense of satisfaction.
Yeah.
But I thank you. I'm going to really remember that garden analogy. I love that.
Thank you. It was discussed in a book called Come As You Are.
Ooh,
but she's talking about like sex and sexuality as a garden, but it really got me thinking about.
Way to extrapolate, my friend.
Yeah.
Yay! Yeah. Thank you.
Also, Come As You Are, I think is a really good
I've heard of it. I thought you might have mentioned it in the past or something, so I'm going to have to add that to my list. So
speaking of Come As You Are, the dead, they will be as they be.
They be as they be all the time, and that's and not our job, but our opportunity, our in some cases our challenge is to figure out what that means for us, right? Because they're dead, they're there, wherever there is, they're there, we're here.
I just love it. They're dead, we're here. Just the ultimate reductive, but straight to the point.
Like, alcohol causes cancer.
They're dead, we're here. Alcohol causes cancer. Done.
All right, let's move on. Let's record an episode. So. And it's not that, right? I mean, if like you say, very reductive, that's kind of the situation. But I would suggest that a lot of people don't think of it that way. I know I don't.
Yeah. So I thought maybe we could start with just kind of discussing what our views are of that relationship proximity.
Sure.
Okay. So I'll start. So I view it as a layering. I like to imagine that this other dimension or this other world, this other way of the energy manifesting is wrapped on top of or parallel to the way the realm that I'm existing in.
Okay.
So they're not really gone and they're not really in another place. They're actually here, or actually I'm there, or we're all both places. But the times whenever that there are opportunities when that overlapping is accessible to me or accessible to them, but that it is not like for example, they're in China and I'm in the United States, and every once in a while a portal opens up between the two. Like, it's not that far away.
Oh, gotcha.
Like, it's actually like more overlapping. And so then as the time of the year, whenever the connection points or the boundaries between those worlds becomes less, it becomes easier to communicate or cross or see or hear. And we'll talk later about like the different ways of communicating, but that on some level, that communication and that connection is always available.
Gotcha. I like that.
So I would love to see, how do you frame it in your mind?
So I would say now, which is it's probably different from maybe 10 years ago, 10 years ago. I think of us more as all of us as quarks. So we're just like these little sparks of energy, right? Just like zooming around, colliding into each other, springing off, running around, and like every living entity in our universe probably takes up like 1/10 of 1% of the universe. And so we have all of that to play with, right? And we can expand, we can stay in that little groove or whatever. And but some of us have chosen to slow down our movement a little bit, and the slower the frequency, the denser the material. And so we've manifested as, well, some people call us meat sacks, but I like to think of us as bodies. Okay, so and at any moment, if we knew the switch, we could flip back to the quarks and just like zing, zing, zing around. And so that people who are literally laying their bodies down are stepping away from that density and moving into a much higher frequency. And that's the dead. And I also think of it, I like your idea. I translated what you said into kind of like these layers, like in the ocean where you have like some currents are warmer, and if you go straight up and down, you're going to go through all of these different currents. But I think of them, some of them are more like jelly, and some are more like water, and some are much more gaseous. And so, and they're not straight, like strata. They're not straight. They're kind of gooey, and they move, and they're like I don't know, different kind of shapes, like jellyfish. And when we talk about that, we're not just talking about us and people who were us and now are no longer us, but our descendants as well. So we're all there. In my opinion, we're all there. It's just a matter of where there is. Like you said, yeah. And so, so I see the dead as people who have laid down this existence, and they're still quarking around. Okay. But what happens is, for those of us who have chosen to slow down and be in this kind of 3D density, there are periods where collectively, because we could all do it at any time, in my opinion. We could all do it at any time if we had enough, whatever, the ability. I mean, we have the ability if we had the recognition of that. But there are times when we collectively as a species have allowed ourselves to kind of see through all of that. And so on one level, maybe we're losing a little bit of density and maybe vibrating slightly higher, or maybe they're slowing down so that, that it's easier for, they're like, oh, those children, they can't really see how they're just the same as we are. So let's slow down a little bit so we can play with them. It's like when grown-ups come, like sit down on the floor to play with their children. That's what I'm kind of picturing. Does that make sense?
I like that you bring up too, that like the ancestors and the descendants it's all there. So, and I think that's important to point out, because I also think that that's a really important point for me in the way I view it, is that time is not linear, that the descendants and the ancestors long before and long after me are also we're all here.
Exactly.
But where is here is here is there, and there is here.
Yeah, there's a Star Trek, the original show, episode where I can't remember exactly if they drank something or whatever, where they sped up so fast that everyone, like if I sped up, you would still be sitting here in front of my laptop, and like you were frozen, and I would just walk around you, play with your hair, do something, take some tea, whatever, and then sit back down and slow myself down, and then we could start talking again. And that's what I'm kind of picturing. So they're right here. They're literally probably touching us or whatever, but they're just going so fast that we just can't see them. So that's my thinking. And I just I lost my dog last week, so it's easy to say. But then it's hard to remember that, or I do remember, but I remember it more painfully than joyfully, so yeah.
I think that's really great to bring up, though. Like, it's one thing to intellectualize, and then going through it, though, like, grief is grief, no matter how we intellectual. Like,
yes.
Like loss is loss. Even if I believe that they're still here, they're still not here the way that they were.
Right? Yes, you're still not eating like treats out of my hand, right? Exactly. Yeah. No, it's true. It's very true.
Or making noise while we record and chewing.
That's right. Yes, you used to.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly.
So maybe we could talk about this concept. I hear it spoken about a lot in pagan circles about the veil.
Yes.
So would you be interested in talking about what is the veil?
Yeah.
And then I have a funny meme to share.
Yeah, I love that. I've seen that a couple of times. Yeah. So one of the things that we talk about at Samhain, and to a lesser extent at Beltane, is that the veil gets thinner. And so that, remember when I was talking about, the parents sitting down on the floor so that it's actually easier for us to see, like they slow down a little bit or something happens, something as a society, we've agreed that something happens so that we're able to have a little bit more contact with them than we can on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the ways that they describe that is like the veil thins, like this barrier between the two worlds becomes thinner and thinner and thinner, so it's easier, like you said. So there's this meme that I've seen, and I think it's from Twitter or X.
Yeah, I've seen it before.
But I've seen it come across my Insta and my Facebook. So I wanted to put it in here. So it's just like a little screen cap of like people talking, and it says this person whose name is Glumshoe says, "The veil is thin here. It's thin everywhere. Of course it's fucking thin. Whoever heard of a thick veil? That shit's lightweight, even sheer." And then below it says, Glumshoe says, "Like shit, Agatha, there's a reason they don't call it the down comforter between the worlds."
No, I love that. And it's true. It's like it's always there. It's always thin. It's always, the veil is thin. Yeah, it's like it is. But we kind of agree to drop some of our blindness, maybe, and we're able to see, because they're seeing us. They're like, oh, children, but it's us. They're like, oh, the veil is thin. And they're like, yeah, shit, Agatha. I love that meme.
I think Agatha is like the generic witch name.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Was she bewitched or no?
I don't know.
No, she was the bumbling witch in Bedknobs and
Is that true? I don't know.
I think so. Agatha, yeah, or maybe what's the mother? No. Glendora. No, I'm trying to think. What's Samantha's? There's Endora. Endora is her mother. But and then it doesn't really matter. But there's an Agatha somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but we'll find. We will find that out and post that on our next episode for those of you who now care.
So then I also think that like this idea of ghosts and stuff like that, like our pop culture ghosts, like we're walking around the house and then there's someone in a white sheet like hanging out in the back, or or
the two girls, the two sisters that talk at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's like a pop culture-y, scary sort of way. But I do think that it probably is rooted in the fact that there is this overlapping of worlds or coexisting of worlds, or all one world just with different energetic speeds, like you said. But I think it's more nuanced than that. It's richer than that. And
for sure.
And it's awesome.
It is. And because it allows us to step outside of our day-to-day, right? Like you said earlier, you can intellectualize. I can intellectualize it and say, "Oh yeah, they're all here." But sitting with that energy is totally different from just saying, "Okay, we're quarks," right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I love about Samhain, this is not a Samhain episode necessarily, but one of the things I enjoy about Samhain rituals and people who explore that energy is that idea of tapping into this collective agreement, so that it's easier for us to communicate.
I love that. So why communicate? And I think for me, as a witch, that's like a no-brainer.
It's like, yeah, why not?
But I think for people for people outside, for non-magical folk, I think that is a really a good question. Like, why? Because I don't think our culture outside of witchy culture really is as would frequent that as much as we do. So why?
So I'm going to think back to, you were talking about cultural things. I think back to like the 1800s, 1900s, the seance. So sometimes it's just to communicate, just to say I love you, right? Sometimes it's where did you hide that treasure? Or,
right.
That's usually in a lot of the seances that there's some sort of mystery that they're trying to solve. But I think for me, wait, are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So,
I am.
Okay. Well, I think we started cultural, so I just wanted to make sure. I think for me, it's just one other way of connecting with people, some of whom I know and love dearly, and some of whom I've never met, right? But it's just another way of interacting with my environment. So they are part of that, and I don't give myself enough time during the year. I sometimes, at various phases for various reasons, and sometimes rituals. But this is an opportunity where the whole world around me is giving me this opportunity, and they're also kind of giving me some energy towards it. So it's easier for me to step outside of my normal 3D and able to do that.
I love that. I think too, one of the reasons why I really like to communicate is that I think I live in a world where talking is prized over listening, where it's like say more, speak more, demand more. I rarely interact with really good listeners.
Ooh,
I rarely come across that,
yes.
And I think that. I mean, this is like maybe a rant that I should do on a check-in, but I think our culture, specifically our culture, like really is like dominate the conversation, control the narrative, and I think that seeps into I think that seeps into our relationships, and so I could talk about that a lot because a good listener is really important to me. By the way, I think you're an incredible listener, and I hope that I'm a good listener to you.
Yes.
I desire to be a good listener to people.
You model for me shutting up and listening, so thank you.
You model it for me. So one of the reasons why I think communicating with the dead is so important is that to me, one of the biggest things about communicating with the dead is not me telling them. It's me listening. Yes. It's me opening myself and paying attention. Oh my gosh. And that's actually one of the things that I remember whenever I was still trying to be Christian. I was trying to fit myself in that box when I was a kid. And I remember thinking, like, all we do is, like, pray, pray, pray. Do we ever, like, stop and listen?
Yeah,
And this is, like, a thought that I had when I was a kid. And I remember asking somebody at the church, like, like, why are we always just, like, asking him for things? Like, do we ever, like, stop and listen? Like, we're just blabbing on. So, anyways.
That's another conversation for another day, but I'd be interested in hearing the response to that.
But like this time of the year, whenever we have this energetic thing happening, it's a really great opportunity for me to really open and listen.
I think that's a fabulous one. Why? So I'm going to ask you, why do we want to? I mean, I don't want to say what do we hope to gain, because it's not transactional. But for you say you prize this opportunity. So when you're listening, what kind of things? I don't know. What are you listening for, or what kind of things do you hear? And is there a disconnect or connection or whatever?
Thank you for asking that. I do want to say, because I keep using the word like listen, and I want to just point out that. I believe that they can communicate, and it's not just verbal. So I'm using the phrase listen. When I say listen, though, I mean I might hear them, I might feel them, I might smell them, I might sense them. It can come across in any of the senses, or there just might be a knowing of, like, they're here right now. Like, I can feel it in my body. I can know it. So I am using the word listen, but I want to just make sure our listeners know it's not.
Opening.
Yes, it's like an open. Thank you. Yeah, it's an opening. Well, one is like, it's friggin' I think that's freaking cool over wherever they are. So I am down. Like whatever they want to say, like whatever they feel like they can share with me, like that's awesome.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like well, they have such. I don't know if you'd say necessarily that they have more wisdom than they did when they were meat sacks, but I'm sorry, when they had bodies, but they have a lot of perspective. Like they've dropped all of the stuff that's keeping me from really seeing you as a person, as opposed to a bunch of perceptions, right? They're not encumbered by that. So they're I don't know if you remember Car Talk. They one of their
Click and Clack, the Tapper Brothers. Yes,
they said we're unencumbered by the thought process, but they're unencumbered by the sensory sensory opportunity / challenges that we have in our bodies. So yeah, it's like a bird's eye view of of everything.
Ooh, I like the way you put that. Yeah, for sure. Is there any reason why you like to or find value in opening yourself to communication?
So yes, there is. So for me, it's like I love talking with you. I love sitting and running my fingers through my dog's hair, and when I do it, I don't want to say when I do it right, but when I drop all of the preconceived notions and, okay, now we're going to talk to this, now we're going to invite when I drop all of that and just shut up and, like you say, open myself to it, it's like that. It's that joy that I have just in communicating in general. Just sometimes it's back and forth, sometimes it's not even words, sometimes it's it's just the experience, and I love that, and so I love that with you, and we're still kind of constrained by words, even when we're talking about the same thing, so we're still constrained by two separate bodies sitting next to each other and not always really getting. But I think that in communicating with the spirits, I'm still constrained by that, but they're not. And to the extent that I can experience a little bit of how they're living lives, or living whatever they're living, right? Or not living, I guess. But, but so that's I think a part of it for me.
Wow. Another part for me is that it's a connection, and it's
twinkling.
Sometimes I think I've mentioned this in other episodes and other times that we've talked, that there's this spell on the mundane where I feel like I'm in the world, and this world just really wants me to forget how magical it is, probably because they want me to buy something. But just remembering how incredible this world is, and remember, and to apply that here, to remember how incredible it is that they aren't gone. They're here. That the people that I have loved and that have transitioned are still here. And the people who will come after me are already here.
Yeah, exactly.
And that I was already here, but I'm just here now, but then I will be there, which is also here. And remembering that. And what is life if not love? And to remember that they're here, and to love.
Preach.
And to love them, and to connect with them, and to know that whenever I am there, I will have the opportunity to love the people who are manifesting in this way. And boy, I want to be a part of that.
Yes. Yeah, and for for this period, it's easier to be a part. It's easier to kind of drop, for me, to drop the 3D, not drop it totally, but to ease myself out of it and just be open to it. And even people who are not doing this energy work, the people who are kind of just, okay, they have the blow up spider on their front lawn, or
I was just thinking, oh my gosh, please keep going, because I wonder if we're like...
all I'm just saying is that even though that's their experience of Halloween, they are still contributing to my energy.
Yes.
That, that they are allowing that blow up spider, that's green. I have never, whatever, but let's go there. That blow up spider is helping to thin the down comforter between the worlds, to thin the veil between the worlds, right? So they're, unbeknownst to them, they're helping me communicate with the dead.
I was, as you were talking, I was picturing this yard across the street from my house that has like inflatables and like robot-y Frankenstein.
And you're looking at it going like, what? Okay,
and, yeah, and when I see them, I'm like, okay, that's their interpretation of this time of year, and like I feel a sense of endearment to them. I'm like, aw, like that's to the level that they've stretched, and that, you know. But I take it, you know. But like, thank you for that animatronic Frankenstein. You're adding energy to what I know to be true.
So may I say this, because we were both thinking about the same thing. For a moment, we eased out of our 3D, and remember how I said we were constrained by words? We we were connecting. So
I love it.
Magic.
I love it.
Yes.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and then, you know, there's the fact that, so it's an African, a West African, a number of the different societies in West Africa believe that when a person dies, when they lay their body down, that they become a spirit, they become an ancestor, and they have various ancestor rituals that they use throughout the day, not just like on, you know, once that they use to communicate with, to remember them, etc. And their belief is that as long as one person still remembers them, that they're a part of that society, they're part of that, still a part of that community. And when that person dies, they're no longer a part of that community, that spirit, not that person, because then they become an ancestor, but that spirit, and then they're reincarnated as a baby. They come back as a baby. Isn't that amazing? But in the meantime, we have there's a lot of the pagan. And I said I was going to turn that off. But, okay.
There's a part of me that thinks that I'm like, the beloved dead are sending us messages through your phone.
Okay, wait, let me just make sure it's totally off, and then I'll start.
I'm hungry for it. Like, who at this time would be sending you a message through your phone?
Oh, okay. So, where was I going with that? Something about pagans.
Yeah. But, so you had talked about the West African tradition.
Okay, yeah.
But then you had said that the pagans have this phrase.
Yeah. So, I'm constantly reminded of that, because a number of the pagan societies have groups have a phrase: "What is remembered lives," and that idea that if we're remembering them, they're still here. They're still a part of us. They're still, you know, and we acknowledge that. We acknowledge that energy, which is not, again, a part of that of the dominant culture. So I just find that so sweet that we see this in villages in West Africa, and then we see this in, you know, at Malibu Beach or whatever, you know, and in San Antonio.
I love the phrase "what is remembered lives," because to me it really brings about this feeling of, by me remembering them, we're still connected, and I know that to be true. And the remembering is me not getting distracted by this world and forgetting the truth, which is that we are all here together, the ancestors and the descendants. And so when I remember that, I can remember that we're still connected.
I love that. And when my dog died last week, a number of people would send me that phrase, and it was such a solace to me, because like we've been saying over the course of this recording is that I know this up in my head, but when my heart's hurting, I kind of forget, and then when someone sends me that, it's like, yes, you know, it takes me out of the grief form. That takes me out of the grief, but it sweetens the grief a bit.
I love that. I love that.
So so one of the things I put in we had our outline, and then I threw in, because we haven't talked about the Camino yet in this episode.
Which I have to remember, just in case our listeners somehow didn't know, the Camino is based on a journey to the dead.
Yes, exactly.
So.
It's a journey to meet the spirits.
Yes.
And, so just really briefly, you know, just reminding everyone who may have forgotten, I don't know how, but that, you know, the idea is that they are, you know, that land, that place represents the veil. right? So just as we're talking about the veil thins and it's easier for us to do this, that if they're at that place, the place where the land meets sea meets sky, that it's easier for them to communicate with the spirit. And as we saw, I mean, it's because you could like see like where they're living. They're like, oh yeah, that's that skyscraper or whatever that, you know, that mama's living in or whatever. So because of the just the brilliance of the sunset on the clouds around it. So we have this like magical moment that almost creates this visual that helps us to drop into something that we, as we've said, we already know, but we need to be reminded of it because we're so 3D, we're so embedded in the physical. And so it just reminds us of that, the fact that, yeah, we're in physical, but we're also really, really spiritual and energetic.
I also love that there's us two witches tromping through northern Spain in the middle of summer, and we're like, we're gonna go meet the dead! It's not like it's not happening. Like it's not happening during like Samhain or even like Beltane, which is like the 2 times of the year.
No,
but we're just like we're going,
and it's easy there,
it
right?
Was easy
because
there.
That's their sound. Like it's instead of it being a time, it's a place, right?
Ooh,
right?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
So can you imagine being there at Samhain? Oh,
no.
Like they might be fishing our bodies out of the
just wander into the ocean.
Like, because they're like, what happened? Oh, well, I don't know.
I thought I was going to meet the dead, so we just...
So I met the dead, literally. Right. But I met them on their terms.
Right.
Yeah, so anyway. But yeah, I figured we have to throw in a Camino
of course,
in every episode. But I think it's totally appropriate for what we've been discussing.
Yeah, and I think it also really shows that there's different ways that our culture manifests around this connection, whether it's the time of year or a certain place. There are ways that we collectively can come together to help bridge that,
or certain rituals. So
in
some, I mean, it doesn't matter, Christian, pagan, whatever, some funeral rites allow people to experience that for a brief moment. So yeah, there's tons of different ways of doing that. So speaking of which,
and I know we could do an entire episode on, and we probably will do an episode on divination. We've done one on tarot, but I just thought it might be interesting if we briefly talked about them in case something strikes one of our listeners and then they could research it more.
Yeah. So one of the things that we tend to do in our circle a lot, we do a lot of trance. And for me, trance is, again, this opportunity to lay down the mundane and to just let my energy, my spirit, my magic kind of manifest unencumbered by the society. And so that's an easy way then for me to meet and communicate with spirits.
I specifically love moving trances.
Well, because movement.
yeah.
But still.
We mentioned tarot, using tarot. I like some visual methods of communication. So anything like sugar scrying or looking into a candle, or the bigger the flame, the better. Yeah. A gigantic fire is awesome.
Like the one that your sister made.
Right.
Was it Beltane a couple of years ago?
Yes.
Where she couldn't participate in ritual because she made the fire so big. Yeah, that was, I remember that.
Oh, man.
I was like, where'd she go? But there's a huge fucking, it was a Zoom ritual, so all we could see
her square, just fire. And every once in a while you'd see her like running back.
Right, or a hand or something. And we were like, yes! Yeah! Which probably was not the best thing because we were probably feeding the flames. But anyway, what were we talking about?
I like the bigger the fire, the better to gaze into.
Tell me about sugar scrying. Tell me about sugar scrying.
The times that I've done it, we were fireside, and then we had mirrors, and then we ritualistically scattered sugar onto the mirrors, and then kind of shook the mirrors ritualistically, and then looked into the mirrors to see. Gotcha. It reminded me a lot of like candle wax, like looking into candle wax.
Gotcha. Oh, that's fabulous. I've sung into sugar. I've never, so I need to experience that. Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
That sounds cool. Singing into sugar.
I'm sure it is. Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is fucking fabulous. So, And then, so more scrying is like, you said Black Mirror, and just getting a bowl of water and just scrying in the bowl of water. And I love water because for me, water represents emotion. Water represents kind of moving from like really moving from really solid earth into something that's a lot more liminal. And so that I get a visual that helps me to do what I'm doing energetically.
I think there's also something to be said about cooking a meal that reminds you of them and opening myself while I'm doing something like that, whether it be cooking or let's say sewing or like something that they did, like press, like ironing. I don't know. Like I remember my grandma would always press my grandfather's pants. So I could imagine like ironing and just being like, I'm remembering her, I'm remembering this, and then opening myself up, just any sort of act that connects me to them.
Yes.
And then opening myself up to communication with them.
Yeah. And then of course there is like the epitome of communicating with the dead, the Ouija board.
I freaking love a good Ouija board, man.
So I think we used one at a retreat. This would have been maybe 10 years ago. And it was pretty wild.
I love that. I love our circle so much.
Yeah, we had the Ouija board, and while we were doing that, this woman was sitting in the corner basically saying, "Oh yeah, there's someone right behind you." Like she could see auras or something. She said, "Yeah, there's someone right behind you." It's like, okay. I wasn't as involved then as I am now, so I was thinking, okay, maybe we need to, because again, I used to binge and purge. I used like tarot or different things, and then I get some sort of glimpse at how powerful they were, and I'd get scared, and then I wouldn't do it for, I'd throw it away or do something like that. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, Ouija board.
Yeah. So there's also like pendulums. I love pendulums because you can buy really beautiful ones, or you can use anything.
Or you can just use your necklace or whatever.
Anything.
Yeah, or a key, or like a key on a cord. Yeah. So yeah. One of the things that I did, this was back. You do it. People do it with Bibles, but I've done it with like dictionaries as bibliomancy, where you ask a question. So in this case, I would probably get into a slightly trance-like state. And if I'm trying to communicate, I'd say, like, are you there or something? And then you just open a book. And usually, like, whatever the sentence is that your eyes light on is the communication. And it's pretty scary when it happens because it's like, fuck. because thank you for, it's like, thank you for asking. They're saying, we've been trying to get to you now for 40 years. Right. And it's like, damn girl.
Right? I feel like yeah. They're like, hello, I've been here the entire time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm quirking around you. But no, you can't hear, you're not listening, whatever. So
I think one thing that I would like to close on is saying that I think we think a lot about, I know Ouija boards are common in our culture. And then we use like seance also is kind of commonly a trope in our culture, but just really offering to our listeners that there are all the different ways of receiving. And so honoring that, because they may be being communicated with and they might not even realize it because it's not coming through a Ouija board,
Exactly. Well, one of the things I wanted to say, because for me, it's kind of the same idea. The Samhain Beltane kind of bookends. And Samhain, I kind of picture like being indoors in the dark or with a flame or candle or and then Beltane, I always picture a bonfire. And some cultures say that it's easier to communicate with the dead at Samhain, and it's easier to communicate with like the Fae and woodland spirits and the spirits of the trees, etc. at Beltane. But that idea, what I think of as kind of communing in Beltane is just laying back outside, and I'm not doing any ritual. So it's kind of funny how I make one more ritualistic and one just like laying there and opening myself up to it. And I imagine that works anytime, right? Not having to do a Ouija board or whatever. Just I would suggest that all of these divination tools are kind of like how in Harry Potter they use wands instead of wandless magic. It helps to focus, like you get a real clear maybe response, whereas it might be more diffused or general if you're just opening it up. right? Or sometimes they're like, you're laying there, bitch, I've been trying to get to you for 20 years or whatever. So who knows?
So I found a poem that I really wanted to share.
I know that I love.
The poem is by
Laura Gilpin.
Laura Gilpin, and I found it on Reddit, on a poetry board, and it's called "Life After Death."
Whew. The things I know: how the living go on living, and how the dead go on living with them.
So that in a forest, even a dead tree casts a shadow, and the leaves fall one by one, and the branches break in the wind, and the bark peels off slowly, and the trunk cracks, and the rain seeps in through the cracks, and the trunk falls to the ground, and the moss covers it.
And in the spring, the rabbits find it and build their nest inside, and have their young, and their young will live safely inside the dead tree.
So that nothing is wasted in nature or in love. I have goosebumps.
I know.
I love that. I love the imagery of, and it's just like the tree falling and that being death, and it being a loss and it being grief, and me knowing that the good comes of it, that the rabbits find it, but it doesn't lessen the grief of that I feel of the tree falling.
And yeah, the impact of it having been there, the impact of it still being there, and the impact of what it becomes. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for this episode as we discuss communicating with the dead. We hope you have enjoyed the magic that has unfolded here at Witchy Wit.
It would be great if you would help make Witchy Wit possible and get access to exclusive content by donating on Patreon.
We'd love it if you join our Witchy community and enjoy shareable content on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Would you do us a big favor and support us by rating and reviewing us wherever you get your podcasts? It's free and helps witchy folks find us.
Feel free to email us at witchywitpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from our community. Reach out and let us know what's brewing in your cauldron.
New episodes are released every second and fourth Friday. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform so our episodes go right to your playlist. You can listen as you ride your broom.
Stay witchy, y'all!